Welcome to Dark Testimony. Tonight's story comes from a night security guard. They testified that the cameras showed someone who isn't alive. But before we reach that night, tell me, where are you watching from right now? This is their testimony.
You ever stared at a screen so long that your own reflection starts to look wrong? That's what I keep thinking about, even now. Those damn security monitors, glowing in the dark, showing me things I wasn't supposed to see. I should probably back up. My name's Aaron. I was a night security guard for an office complex just outside the city. Nothing glamorous, just a sprawling, glass-faced corporate building that looked impressive in the day and felt like a tomb at night. They hired me through an agency. I was supposed to watch the feeds, do a couple rounds, sign off in the logbook. Easy money for someone who didn't mind being alone. And I didn't mind. In fact, I preferred it. Or at least, I thought I did. The first time I walked into that building on the graveyard shift, it smelled like lemon disinfectant, sharp enough to sting my nose. The lobby had polished floors so shiny you could see the ceiling lights doubled in them. And the glass doors were locked behind me with a heavy click that echoed too loud in the empty space. It was quiet, too quiet. You don't realize how much you rely on background noise until it's stripped away. No chatter, no phones, no elevators. Just the hum of the building's guts. Vents exhaling, lights buzzing faintly, machinery somewhere deep in the belly. Security office sat tucked in a corner of the first floor. Not big, just a desk, a chair that squeaked when you leaned back, a rack of dusty binders, and a wall of monitors. 16 cameras, each covering a different patch of the building. Hallways, stairwells, storage rooms, the parking lot. Nothing artistic, just angles chosen for maximum coverage. I remember sinking into the chair, adjusting the belt on my uniform, and telling myself, this is fine. Nothing to it. Just keep an eye on things. But even in that first hour, something felt off. It was the way the cameras moved. Not literally, their angles were fixed, but the image moved, if that makes sense. A flicker here, a slow pulse of brightness there, like the building itself was breathing through the cables. It made my eyes ache. Still, I shrugged it off. Old equipment, probably. My job was to log rounds every hour, so at midnight, I grabbed the heavy ring of keys, clipped the flashlight to my belt, and started my walk. The building was designed with long, glass-walled hallways. At night, they became mirrors. I'd walk past them and see myself moving in the dark. Flashlight beam cutting across polished surfaces, shadows stretching behind me. The further I went from the lobby, the colder it got. The heating didn't seem to reach the back offices. The carpet muffled my steps, But every so often, there was a noise that wasn't mine, like the crack of settling wood or a door easing back against its frame. I tried to tell myself it was normal, except for one thing: the elevators. There were 4 of them, stainless steel doors that gleamed even in the low emergency lights, and on my first round, one of them dinged, loud, sudden, out of nowhere. I froze, listening. The light above the far left elevator glowed green. The door slid open with a groan. Empty. I stood there too long, heart thudding. I hadn't called it. Nobody was in the building. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. I clicked my flashlight nervously against my palm and stepped closer, peering inside. Just a mirrored box, floor spotless, no signs of life. Still, I wrote it in the log when I got back to the office. End. 12:14 a.m. Elevator opened on its own. The act of writing it down made me feel a little saner, like I was putting it outside myself, keeping it from festering in my head. The second round, nothing happened. Third, nothing. It was around 3 in the morning that I noticed the first real problem. I was back in the security office, sipping a coffee gone lukewarm, when one of the monitors blinked, not flickered, blinked, like a shutter dropping, then opening again. And in that fraction of a second, something had changed. The camera showed the second floor hallway, normally empty, just grey carpet and locked office doors. But when the picture came back, there was someone, a man. He stood facing away from the camera, middle of the hall, too still. His suit looked a decade out of date. Boxy shoulders, wide lapels, the kind of thing you'd see in an old catalogue. He didn't move, didn't sway, just stood there. I sat up so fast the chair squealed. My pulse hammered in my throat. I leaned closer, squinting. The resolution was grainy, but enough to see the outline of him. His hands hung loose at his sides, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. I fumbled for the radio, then stopped. Who was I going to call? There wasn't anyone else on duty. Instead, I stared at the other monitors, waiting to see if he'd show up elsewhere. 30 seconds passed, then 60. He didn't move. I muttered under my breath, "No way. No way you're real." But the thing is, the camera angles overlapped. If someone was standing in that hallway, he'd have shown up on at least 2 monitors. On the second feed, nothing. All was empty. On the first, he was still there. I rubbed my eyes hard enough to see stars. When I looked again, the man was gone. I don't know how long I sat frozen before I realized I'd been holding my breath. lungs burned. Finally, I forced myself to scrawl it in the logbook. My handwriting shook. 3:07 a.m. Male figure appeared on cam 7, not visible on adjacent cams. Disappeared after 1 minute. The act of writing it down didn't help this time. If anything, it made it worse, because now it was real. And that was only the first night. You ever get that sinking feeling? Like you've agreed to something without realizing what it really meant? That's what I felt driving back the next night. The building sat black against the skyline, a dead hunk of glass and steel, with just a few floor lights glowing like dull embers. My stomach twisted the whole way there. I kept telling myself I needed the paycheck, that I'd imagined the figure on the monitor. But some part of me knew I was walking into something I couldn't walk out of. The lobby was just as quiet, just as cold. When the glass doors locked shut behind me, it sounded too final, like being sealed inside a vault. I checked the logbook. No notes from the day shift. No mention of malfunctioning elevators or weird shadows. Just routine entries. Cleaning crew came in at 6, left by 10. Nothing unusual. So why was my hand shaking when I picked up the pen to sign in? I sat back in that squeaky chair and stared at the monitors. 16 views of emptiness. I tried to distract myself, checked emails on the dusty office computer, sipped too much bitter coffee, but my eyes kept dragging back to the screens. Every flicker made me tense. Every hum of the vents sounded like breathing. I told myself I'd handle it differently this time. If I saw anything strange again, I'd go check. Put it to rest once and for all. The first round, nothing. The elevator stayed still. My footsteps echoed too loudly, but at least I didn't hear the ding of doors sliding open on their own. The second round, though, that's when it started. I was halfway down the east corridor, the one layered with those tall windows, when I heard it. Footsteps, not mine. They came from the floor above me. Muted thuds, steady, like someone pacing. I stopped dead, head tilted, flashlight beam jittering as my hand shook. The steps stopped too. I waited. My throat went dry. Then, 2 more. Quicker, closer to the stairwell. I should have radioed, should have done anything but what I did. I crept to the stairwell door, pressed my ear against the cold metal. Silence. My heart was beating so hard, it almost drowned out everything else. When I finally pushed the door open, the stairwell yawned dark and empty, concrete walls swallowing the light. I swept the beam upward. Nothing. Just the stairs, curling up to the next floor. But the smell hit me. Not lemon cleaner this time. Something faint, metallic, like rust. I backed away, shut the door. and told myself not to write it down. Back in the office, I sat staring at the feeds again, pulse still racing. Nothing on the second floor camera, nothing moving at all until 2:11 a.m. The far left monitor glitched again. That blink, and he was back. Same man, same suit, this time facing toward the camera. I can still see it burned into my mind, the way his face looked washed out, like overexposed film. Dot. His features didn't line up right. Eyes too dark, mouth too sharp. But what really froze me was that he wasn't just standing there. He was smiling. Not wide, not cartoonish, just this thin, patient smile. And his head tilted more than before, like he was studying me through the lens. I swear to God, I felt it, like a weight pressing behind my eyes, forcing me to keep staring. My skin crawled. My throat locked. I whispered, "No, no, no." Then something happened that made my stomach flip. The monitor buzzed, a low, distorted hum. I thought maybe it was a loose wire, until the speakers above the desk crackled, and I heard it. Breathing. Not mine, not static. Actual breathing. Faint and wet, drawn out too long on the exhale. The sound was coming through the building's audio feed, patched from the cameras. Which didn't make sense. There were no mics on those halls. I lurched forward, fumbling with the control panel, desperate to cut the sound. My fingers slipped when I glanced back at the monitor. The man was gone, just like before. I sat in silence, chest heaving, until the hum of the vents filled the void again. This time, I did write it down. My entry looked insane. 2:11 a.m. Male figure on cam 7 appeared to smile. Audio feed activated. Heard breathing. Cut off after 15 seconds. The act of writing it made my hand shake worse. And worse still, when I went on the third round, I found something waiting for me. It was in the break room, second floor, the vending machine corner where the night staff used to grab snacks. A chair had been pulled out from the table, not just moved a little like someone bumped it. It was angled, facing the camera mounted in the corner, like someone had been sitting there, waiting. I swept the flashlight beam around the room. Empty. But the metallic smell was stronger now. It clung to the back of my throat, made me want to gag. I pushed the chair back under the table, trying to pretend it meant nothing. But as soon as I let go, it scraped against the floor, moving back an inch on its own. I bolted, heart slamming so hard I thought I'd pass out before I hit the stairwell. By the time I got back to the office, I was drenched in sweat, breathing like I'd run a marathon. The monitors all showed empty hallways, nothing out of place. But I swear, when I glanced at the reflection of the screens in the office window, I saw it. Over my own shoulder. A pale figure, just for a second, and when I spun around, the room was empty. I told myself I'd quit. I swore up and down driving home after that second night that I'd call the agency, tell them I wasn't coming back. But you know how it is. Rent doesn't pay itself. And there was this sick curiosity gnawing at me. Like if I walked away now, I'd never know what I'd seen. So I came back. Third night in a row. The lobby greeted me like a morgue again. Same lemon, cleaner smell. Only now it felt thicker, like perfume sprayed to cover something sour underneath. I paused at the logbook. My entries sat there in shaky pen strokes, evidence of something I couldn't explain. But the page after mine, blank. The day guard hadn't written a thing. No mention of the vending room chair. No note about strange noises. Like he hadn't noticed anything. Or worse, like he hadn't been there. I signed my name. Anyway, my hand left a faint sweat smear on the paper. By midnight, I was already wired. Every creak of the vents made me flinch. I kept scanning the monitors in nervous sweeps, expecting to see that pale figure pop up again. But the cameras just showed the same lifeless emptiness until my first round. That night, something changed. When I came back through the east corridor, one of the framed company posters, the kind with stock photo smiles and motivational slogans, was lying face down on the floor. Glass cracked, frame splintered. It hadn't been like that an hour earlier. I crouched down, picked it up carefully. My flashlight beam caught the glass, glinting like a jagged grin. The poster showed a woman in a blazer, shaking hands with a client, under the words, "Integrity builds trust." But the crack in the glass cut straight across her smile, twisting it into something grotesque. I set it back against the wall and forced myself to move on. My skin crawled with the certainty that if I looked over my shoulder, something would be standing there. Back in the office, I tried to steady my breathing. I glanced at the monitors and froze. Camera 12, the parking lot. A figure stood at the edge of the asphalt, just outside the circle of lamplight. Not the man this time. Smaller. A woman, maybe. Her outline was thin. Her hair long and dark. She didn't move. I leaned so close to the screen. My nose almost touched it. The resolution was garbage, pixels shifting in the static. But I could swear she was facing the building, facing me. I checked the adjacent camera. Nothing there. Checked another angle. Also empty. Only camera 12 showed her. I whispered, "Not real, not real, not real." But when I blinked, she was closer. Half a step into the light. Like she to cycle the feed that the button stuck when the screen flickered back. Empty locked, no figure. I sagged forward, trembling, my forehead nearly hitting the desk. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the reflection. The office window behind me, faintly mirroring the monitors in its dark glass. For half a second, I saw her standing behind my chair. I spun so fast the chair nearly doubled. No one there, just empty space, lemon cleaner air. But I swear it felt colder. By the time I forced myself to make the second round, I was jittery as hell. Flashlight beam quivering across the walls. Every corner looked wrong. Every shadow seemed thicker than it should. When I hit the stairwell landing between the first and second floors, I saw it. Something scratched into the paint. At first, I thought it was random graffiti. Jagged lines gouged deep into the wall. But when I leaned closer, the letters took shape. Don't watch. The grooves were fresh. The paint curled at the edges, dust scattered below. I staggered back, flashlight beam dancing. My throat closed up. Someone had carved that since my last round. I practically sprinted the rest of the circuit, boots slamming too loud against the carpet. When I collapsed back into the security chair, I couldn't look at the monitors, not right away. My nerves were raw. My skin felt too tight, like something was pressing from the inside. Finally, though, I forced myself. Empty halls, empty stairwells, empty lot, and then camera 7. The man again, closer this time, not the far end of the hall, but right near the lens, almost filling the frame. His face clearer, washed out skin, stretched too thin over cheekbones. His smile sharper, teeth shadowed, his head tilted, except now it wasn't to the side, it was down, as if he were bending closer to the camera. Closer to me. The screen hissed, that distorted buzz again, rattling my teeth. And then, faint, under the static, words, a whisper. I swear I heard it. Just one word, wet and breathless. Aaron. I whipped the power cord out of the wall. The monitors died with a snap, plunging the office into thick silence. My own breath came ragged, loud. The vents hummed above me, but underneath it, faint as thread, someone else was breathing in the dark. I shouldn't have gone back after that. 3 nights of warnings should have been enough. But some mix of pride and stupidity drove me there again. Pride, because I didn't want to admit the job had beaten me. Stupidity, because I thought maybe I could get proof. If I could just catch something concrete, I could shove it in the agency's face and walk away, knowing I wasn't crazy. 4th night, the air felt different the second I stepped through the lobby doors. Heavier, like walking into a room where someone had been crying. I remember hesitating, my hand hovering over the logbook pen. The pages looked warped, like moisture had gotten into them, though the air smelled bone dry. My name from the night before had smudged, ink feathering like veins. I almost left right then, and then nothing almost. Instead, I wrote my name again, though the letters came out crooked, and sat back down in that squeaky chair. The monitors powered up without me plugging them back in. That should have been impossible. I'd ripped the cord out the night before, like it had never been yanked. That's when the clock on the wall ticked. Loud. Too loud. I looked up. The second hand wasn't moving forward anymore. It was moving backward. Slow, deliberate clicks, ticking down time instead of up. I pushed the chair back so fast it hit the wall. My pulse roared in my ears. Then, ding, the elevator. My body went rigid. I turned toward the monitors just in time to see the far left. Camera, ground, floor. Show the elevator doors sliding open. The interior, lights flickered. And someone stepped out. Not the man this time. Not the woman from the lot. A kid. Small frame. Maybe 10 years old. Wearing a school uniform. Decades out of style. Shirt too big. Tie loose. Hair slicked down in a way no modern kid wore it. He walked stiffly down the hall, shoes tapping too evenly, like a metronome. My chest locked. I told myself, check another camera, prove it's not real. I flipped to the adjacent feed, empty. Back to the first feed. He was closer, walking straight towards the camera. I whispered, stop. He didn't. Step, 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 until he was standing inches from the lens, his pale forehead pressing against it, eyes, black voids, staring into mine. The monitor glitched white, and then nothing. I scrambled back, tripped over the chair leg, landed hard on the carpet. The static hiss filled the room, sharp as knives. Then the audio kicked in. This wasn't breathing, it was knocking. Steady, hollow knocks, like knuckles rapping wood. 1, 2, 3. My eyes darted around the room. No doors moved, no walls shook. The sound was coming from the speakers, filling the office, echoing in my chest. And then, nothing. I forced myself up, trembling so hard my knees barely held. And then I realized it wasn't random. The knocks had rhythm. 3. Pause. 2. Pause. 1. Like a countdown. I slapped the panel, killed the audio feed, but the knocks kept going, muffled now, leaking through the walls themselves. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my flashlight, bolted from the office, and started running rounds like a lunatic. If something was out there, I'd rather face it in the halls than sit in that office, waiting for the knocks to reach zero. The building swallowed the sound of my boots. My own breathing came harsh, panicked. When I reached the second floor break room, I froze. The chair, the one that had moved on its own before, it was back out again, facing the door, like it was waiting for me. The metallic stench rolled out of the room in a wave, stronger than ever, cloying in my nose, coating my tongue. I gagged, clamped a hand over my mouth. Then my flashlight flickered, and in that half-second of darkness, I heard it. The scrape of wood against tile. When the beam steadied, the chair was closer, halfway across the floor, coming toward me. I staggered back, slammed the door, and didn't stop running until I was back at the stairwell. My hand shook so bad, it barely got the key into the lock. That's when I noticed something carved into the stairwell wall again. New letters, gouged deep and dripping dark rust. We see you. My stomach turned to ice. I bolted back to the office, thinking maybe I could call for help, maybe just hear another human voice. But when I grabbed the landline phone, it was already off the hook, resting neatly on the desk, as if waiting for me. And on the other end, faint and whispery, came a voice, not static, not breathing, a voice that sounded inside out. Words slurred, like they were being forced through lungs that hadn't worked in years. It said my name, not once, over and over. Aaron, Aaron, Aaron. And underneath it, another sound. That same patient, wet breathing. But this time, it wasn't coming from the speaker. It was coming from directly behind me. I didn't want to turn around. Every nerve in my body screamed not to. But fear has this sick way of dragging you where you don't want to go. I turned, and for a split second, the office wasn't empty. There was someone leaning over my shoulder, so close their face should have brushed mine. Skin grey as paper, eyes sunk so deep they were just pits, glossy and black. Lips cracked but pulled back in a smile that showed too many teeth, like a second row hidden in the gums. Then, gone. The air where they'd been was freezing, sharp in my lungs. I staggered back into the desk, nearly knocking the monitors over. The phone was still pressed to my ear, whispering my name. I slammed it down. The whisper didn't stop. It just crawled into the room with me, vibrating in the vents, dripping from the ceiling like condensation. I shouted, "Stop it! Leave me the hell alone!" And for the first time, it did. The silence was so sudden, it was worse than the noise. My ears rang with it. Then one of the monitors blinked. Camera 7. The man again. but not standing in the hall this time. Walking toward the office, I watched in frozen horror as his pale figure moved from one camera to the next, always closer, always moving with that slow, deliberate stride. Second floor hallway, stairwell landing, ground floor corridor, and then outside the security office door. The camera pointed straight at it, and there he was, standing on the other side of the very door in front of me. Head tilted, thin smile fixed, watching. I couldn't breathe. My chest seized up. The doorknob rattled. Soft at first, then harder, metal scraping. I backed up until I hit the wall. Flashlight clutched in my shaking hands like it was a weapon. The knob twisted, stopped, and then, slowly, turned the other way. I thought it would open. I swear I thought it would. But at the last second, it stopped. And the knocking came back. This time not through the speakers, directly against the door. 3 hard, hollow thuds that shook the frame. I yelled again, voice cracking, "Who's there?" The knocking stopped for 5 long seconds. Silence. Then, a whisper on the other side of the door, clear as if someone had pressed their lips right to the wood. "Aaron." I almost dropped the flashlight. My hands went numb. The whisper wasn't distorted now. It wasn't wet or broken. It was clean, familiar. It sounded like my father. But my father's been dead for 8 years. I froze, every part of me torn in two. Half of me wanted to open that door. Half of me wanted to bolt through the window instead. I didn't do either, because the whisper came again. And this time, it didn't sound like just him. It sounded like everyone. Layered voices. My mother, my sister, old co-workers, people I hadn't thought about in years, all whispering my name in a chorus that rattled the glass in its frame. I clapped my hands over my ears and screamed, "Shut up!" And then the power went out. The monitors blinked to black. The vents went quiet. The emergency lights flickered red, casting everything in a sick, bloody glow. The silence after the chorus was worse than anything I'd felt yet. My own breath sounded like a roar in that dead stillness. And then the door handle clicked, turned, and slowly the door opened on its own. Just a crack, just enough for the red light to seep into the hall. I raised the flashlight, beam shaking wildly, expecting to see the pale man, or the kid, or that woman from the lot. But there was nothing. The hallway was empty, except the floor was wet. A faint trail of dark spots led away from the door, glistening in the red light, like oil or blood. I didn't want to follow it. God help me, I didn't. But something about it pulled me forward, like being caught in a current. I stepped into the hall. The air was colder. My breath fobbed in front of me. The trail wound down the corridor, past the elevator, toward the stairwell. I followed, each step louder than the last, until I reached the landing. And there, carved fresh into the wall, were more words. Not just scratched this time, gouged deep, the paint and plaster ripped open, dripping that same dark fluid. Come, see. My knees nearly gave out. I braced myself against the wall, heart battering my ribs. Behind me, the elevator dinged. I spun. The doors slid open with a groan. Inside was the kid again, standing perfectly still, his head tilted. And in that red light, I realized it wasn't a kid. It was smaller, yes, child-sized, but its skin was wrong. Too tight, too waxy. The proportions just slightly off, as if someone had guessed what a child should look like and gotten it wrong. Its mouth opened, and I heard every voice again, all of them screaming my name. I dropped the flashlight, and the thing stepped forward. I don't remember choosing to run. My body just moved. 1 second, that child thing was stepping out of the elevator, outstretched in an inhuman scream of voices. And the next, I was tearing down the corridor, boots slamming against the tile. Building warped around me. I swear the hallways were longer than before, stretching like elastic. Doors I passed 100 times looked unfamiliar, their numbers reversed, handles on the wrong sides. My lungs burned, every breath coming out ragged, fogging in the air. And the whole time, the voices followed, not shouting anymore, whispering again, always just behind me, no matter how fast I ran. I slammed through a stairwell door and nearly went tumbling headfirst down the steps. My flashlight bounced, beam jerking wild arcs along the concrete walls. The words carved there before, "Don't watch, we see you," were deeper now. I could see chunks of paint and plaster scattered across the steps, as if gouged freshly that very second. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a noose. I stumbled down to the basement level, desperate for a place to hide, some corner without cameras. The air was heavier down there, damp and sour, like wet stone. The overhead lights buzzed weakly, casting jittering shadows across the storage cages and boiler tanks. It felt wrong, like I'd stepped out of the office building entirely and into some other place. My flashlight beam caught on something hanging from the chain link fence of one of the cages. A tie, thin, striped, decades old, just dangling there, swaying slightly though the air was still. My stomach dropped. That was the same tie the pale first, it looked empty. Just shelves of old cardboard boxes, some busted chairs, a file cabinet. Then the boxes shifted. Something pushed them aside from within, and a face leaned out through the mesh. Not the man. Not the kid. Not the woman. A different one. The skin sloughed off in places, hanging loose like wet paper. Eyes blank white. The mouth stretched too wide. Teeth broken, but grinning anyway. I stumbled back, heart about to rupture, when the other cages began to rattle. One after another, the chain links shook, doors buckled, as if dozens of things inside were trying to get out. The whispers rose again, overlapping, bleeding together into words I couldn't separate. Then, one clear phrase cut through. "You shouldn't have looked." I bolted up the stairs, taking them 3 at a time, flashlight clattering against the walls. When I burst onto the first floor again, the building was wrong. The lobby should have been in front of me. Instead, I stood in another hallway. Same grey carpet, same bland doors, but longer, darker, lined with more motivational posters. And every single one had changed. No smiling faces now, just blurred shadows, stretched and warped. Words beneath them twisted into sentences that made my stomach churn. "Your name belongs to us." Every eye is watching. Don't turn around. The last one nearly broke me, because as I read it, I felt it. Hot breath at the back of my neck. I froze, didn't move, didn't breathe. Every part of me screamed not to look, but instinct won. I turned, no one there. Just the hallway stretching back, empty, silent. But when I turned forward again, he was there. The pale man, standing 10 feet away, blocking the hall, closer than I'd ever seen him. His skin wasn't just pale now, it was translucent. I could see the bluish veins underneath, twitching like worms. His smile was wider, mouth straining, splitting the corners of his cheeks. And his eyes. God, his eyes weren't eyes. They were pits. Hollow sockets, spilling a black mist that writhed and curled into the air. And then, nothing. I staggered back, flashlight trembling in my grip. My voice cracked, raw. "What do you want from me?" The mist thickened, spreading along the ceiling like smoke. The overhead lights fizzled, popping one after another, until only the emergency red glow remained. And then, for the first time, he spoke. Not in whispers, not layered voices, just his voice. Flat, patient. To be seen. I couldn't move. My whole body locked. He stepped forward. The carpet darkened beneath his feet, spreading like ink with every step. I realized he wasn't walking. Not exactly. The hallway was pulling him closer. The distance shrinking, no matter how far back I leaned. I screamed, spun, and ran the other way. But the hall bent with me. Every turn led back to him. Every corridor curved wrong, feeding me back to his pale figure. His hungry smile, the mist leaking wider. Finally, I threw myself into the nearest door, slamming it shut behind me. Darkness swallowed me. My flashlight beam cut across the room. Rows of filing cabinets, paper stacked high, dust thick in the air. But every folder I opened, every page I yanked out, held the same thing. My name. Over and over. Typed, scribbled, stamped. Pages filled with nothing but Aaron. And on the last page I touched, letters walked, as if alive, curling into a sentence that made my blood ice. This is your testimony. I don't know how long I stood in that room, clutching those papers, heart pounding like it wanted to rip out of my chest. Every single page, my name, not just typed neat in black ink. Some were jagged, written in what looked like charcoal. Others smeared, like they'd been scrawled in blood with a fingertip. And in between the repetition of Aaron, 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 other phrases bled through. He looked. He stayed. Now he belongs. I dropped the file, pages scattering, and stumbled backward. My shoulders hit the cabinet. The metal groaned like it hated being touched. That's when the light of my flashlight flickered. Just once. But when it steadied, the filing cabinet wasn't there anymore. Neither was the stack of papers. I stood in an empty concrete room. No furniture, no dust, no doors, except the one I'd come through. I spun around, except the door was gone too. Just seamless wall. The air thickened, heavy in my lungs, like breathing through cloth. I shined the flashlight across the concrete, desperate for a seam, a crack, something to prove I hadn't just been sealed alive inside a cube. And then I heard it, a soft knock from behind the wall. 3 taps, slow, deliberate. I pressed my ear against the cold surface. The knocks came again, lower this time, echoing as if from far away. Then a voice, faint, almost human. Help me. I staggered back, flashlight trembling, stomach lurching. The voice repeated, louder this time. Help me. He's coming. My throat dried out. Against every instinct, I raised my hand and knocked back. Just one tap. Silence. Then, the voice spoke again. Closer. Urgent. Don't look when he speaks. The wall in front of me rippled like water. My reflection shimmered across it, but it wasn't me. The man in the reflection looked like me, sure. The same build, same haircut, but his eyes were gone. Hollow pits just like the pale man's. Its mouth stretched wide in a grin. I couldn't make my own face copy. I dropped the flashlight. The room plunged into dark, but the reflection reflection glowed faintly on the wall, pale and grinning, even though there was no light to cast it. And then it opened its mouth. My own voice came out. You saw me. Now they see you. The wall cracked like glass, spider webs of fractures racing out from the reflection's face. Pieces began to fall away, not onto the ground, but inward, like the wall was hollow, like there was space behind it. And I swear I saw eyes in that space, dozens, hundreds, all opening at once. I snatched the flashlight off the floor, but when I flicked it on, the wall was smooth again. No cracks, no reflection, just blank concrete. I collapsed against it, head in my hands, whispering, I'm losing my mind. Then I heard the cameras, not just the usual quiet buzz. This was louder, a chorus of mechanical whirs and clicks, like every single one in the building was shifting at the same time. They weren't just watching, they were searching. And then I understood. It wasn't the building that was twisted. It wasn't the ghosts, or the whispers, or even the pale man himself. It was the cameras. They were the eyes. Every time I looked at them, they looked deeper into me. They pulled me further in. That's why the footage showed things I couldn't explain. Why the whispers always knew where I was. Why the walls themselves seemed alive. The cameras weren't recording the building. They were recording me, changing me. And the pale man, he wasn't some random ghost. He was the result, the product. He was what happens after enough eyes have looked too long. I needed out. I didn't care if I had to break a window, tear the doors off their hinges. I shoved the flashlight into my belt and sprinted through the darkness until I found another exit sign glowing weak red above a door. I slammed into it. It opened. Cold air hit my face. Fresh, real. The parking lot. Snow drifted in lazy flakes under the security lamps. And then, nothing. My car sat right there. A miracle. I almost cried as I ran toward it, my breath fogged in the freezing night, my boots crunching the ice. I yanked the driver's door open, threw myself inside, jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine roared. Headlights cut through the dark. Relief poured through me. And then the rearview mirror moved. Not much. Just tilted down a few inches on its own. I froze. My pulse thudded in my ears. In the mirror's reflection, the back seat was full, packed tight, faces pressed against the glass. White eyes, broken teeth, slack skin, all grinning, all whispering. I spun around, fists raised. The back seat was empty. Just me, just silence. When I turned back to the mirror, the reflection hadn't changed. The faces still stared, filling the space, And then nothing. And behind them, rising taller than the rest, was him. The pale man, mouth open too wide, smoke spilling out like ink. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing across the ice, and sped toward the lot's exit, heart jackhammering. But the road didn't appear. No matter how far I drove, I was still in the lot. Lights looping endlessly, snow falling, shadows pressing closer in the mirrors. I wasn't escaping. I was already inside. I don't know how long I drove in circles, the car lurching around the same cracked asphalt, the same lamps burning their cold halos into the falling snow. Minutes, hours, time didn't matter anymore. The gas gauge didn't move. My hands cramped on the wheel until my knuckles split raw, but the loop held me tight. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, the faces multiplied. At first, there were a dozen, then 30, then so many I couldn't count. They weren't even pressed against the glass anymore. They were crawling over each other, layered like a nest of pale insects. Their whispers filled the cabin, not muffled, but right against my ears. Ours now. He looked. We'll look back forever. And always, towering above them, was him, the pale man. His smile wider than his skull could hold. Black smoke unfurling from his mouth and curling across the mirror's surface. I tried ripping the mirror down. My fingers clawed at the plastic until my nails tore, but it wouldn't budge. It wasn't glass anymore. It was an opening, a lens. I stopped the car. My chest heaved, lungs burning like fire. "You're not real," I said out loud. "You're not real." The whisper stopped. The faces froze. And then, one by one, they all turned their heads in unison and looked directly at me. Not at the reflection, not through the mirror. At me. The pale man leaned forward, filling the glass. His mouth opened wider and wider until it was just a black tunnel rimmed with teeth. And the sound that poured out wasn't human. It was the sound of static. The same static I'd heard in the guard room from the cameras. Only now, it was inside me. It rattled my teeth, shook my bones, made my vision blur. I screamed, but the noise swallowed it whole, pulling my voice into the mirror. I snapped. I threw the car door open and stumbled into the snow. Dropping to my knees, my throat ached, my ears rang, my head felt like it was splitting open. The parking lot stretched forever. Lamps buzzed in their halos. The same snow fell, cold and endless. I turned back. The car was gone. Just me, just the lot. And the cameras. They were everywhere now. perched on the lamppoles, hanging from the air itself, glowing red. Dozens of little lenses, all aimed at me, recording, watching. My knees buckled. I hit the ground, palms scraping the ice. I covered my face with both hands, whispering, "Don't look, don't look, don't look." But I had already looked. I felt it in my chest, in my skull, like something inside me was shifting, rearranging. My thoughts didn't feel like my own anymore. They echoed, doubled back, whispered, in voices not mine. That's when I remembered the note I'd read earlier, the one scrawled among the endless errands. Don't look when he speaks. And I realized what it meant. Looking at him wasn't the curse. Hearing him wasn't the curse. Doing both at once was. And I had. The snow thickened. Shapes moved in it. Bodies dragging themselves closer. The pale figures from the mirror, crawling out into the open, circling me like sharks. Their white eyes blinked in unison, little camera shutters snapping. I tried to run. My legs wouldn't listen. They were already here. They pressed in, breathless, cold hands brushing my arms, my neck. They didn't grab me. They didn't have to. They just leaned close, faces inches from mine, whispering all at once. "Look, look!" And above them, taller than the lamps, the pale man rose. He didn't walk. He didn't move. One moment he wasn't there. The next he was. His grin cut the sky open. The lamps flickered. The cameras swiveled. And then everything went black. I woke up in my apartment. At least, I thought I did. The sunlight poured through the blinds. My alarm buzzed faintly. My phone lay beside me. For a moment, I believed it, that I'd fallen asleep at home. Dreamed the whole night. Until I noticed the blinking red light. A tiny one, perched in the corner of my ceiling. A camera. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding. Every corner of the room had one, hidden in the vents, tucked into the lamp, hanging like spiders from the walls. I backed into the bathroom. There too, little red dots, glowing faint in the tiles, the faucet, the mirror, everywhere. And when I looked into the mirror, I didn't see my face. I saw him, the pale man, smiling through my eyes. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Shards scattered across the sink. My reflection was gone. For a second, relief almost broke me. But then, each shard still showed him dozens of little pieces of my face, all smiling his smile. And they were moving, not in sync with me, on their own, whispering, watching, recording. That was months ago, maybe years. Time isn't straight for me anymore. Sometimes I wake up in my bed, sometimes in that parking lot. places I've never been, but the cameras are always there. And every time I blink, I think I'm losing one more piece of myself. I don't know how much longer I'll last before I'm nothing. But another face in the mirror, whispering to whoever looks next. So if you ever work night security and you see the red light of a camera blinking at you, listen to me. Don't wave. Don't smile. Don't even glance at the screen. Because if you do, they'll know your name. And once they know your name, they never close their eyes. And if you ever hear your name whispered from the dark, don't turn around, just run.